watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
All morning long, we have been watching and monitoring the president's visit to Alligator Alcatraz. So what you're seeing on the left side of the screen is the camera as it walks through the facility. We were inside just moments ago, and you watched it here live on Fox 35 News Plus, where the inmates or the detainees will be sleeping. We were inside their quarters, their bunks, and you saw that they were bunk beds, and it looked like they were several rows deep. Again, that is a facility that will be hosting 5,000 people. Not sure if you caught it there on the left side of your screen as the camera was walking to set up for its next shot here for this roundtable. That would have been the...
Ladies and gentlemen,
like
please
that was,
welcome the 45th and 47th
and here's
President of
the
the United
president.
States,
But it looks like that would have been sort of a cafeteria. So this is the roundtable portion of the tour.
Florida Live starts now.
It is the video of the morning, and this is President Donald Trump as he gets off Air Force One this morning in Ochapee, Florida. Here in the Sunshine State for the first time since the beginning of May to take a tour of Alligator Alcatraz. You see there, he shook hands with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He also got off the plane with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. These are moments that you watched with us on Fox 35 News Plus. If you're with us at 11 o'clock, we had 2 hours of continuous coverage. Now, the three of them then took a tour inside the facility, and this was our first look along with you of this facility as it was complete. You'll see the beds there. They are bunk-style beds, and there were numbers, scores of them here in this one area alone that we could see. Gives you a close look at the close living quarters in which the about 3,000 migrant detainees will be held. And this is some more video of when we got a chance to walk through. Now, all of that led up to a roundtable in the late morning, which went on for a little more than 1 hour. The president arrived there. He ended up taking some questions there at the end, and that all of it about Alligator Alcatraz. He was also given a question about the big, beautiful bill, which, as he was seated here in Ochapee, ended up passing in the United States Senate thanks to a tie-breaking vote from Vice President J.D. Vance. So it has been a very busy morning. If you've been with us here on Fox Local and on YouTube, you've seen it with us here firsthand. Manny Martinez here with you until 3 o'clock on Florida Live. We thank you for joining us. Garrett has the week off. We do have a reporter. It is Fox 35's Marie Ettinger. She has been out and in Ochapee. And Marie, you were with us at 11 o'clock. You gave us a little bit of a look as to what the scene was like. You mentioned that there was a protest that was going to begin around noon. Did that ever materialize, Marie?
Materialized, honestly, a few minutes after we wound up hanging up with you last time, Annie. It was like not even 10 minutes later, everyone got here, and it got pretty rowdy, actually. I was surprised. There was some yelling back and forth between two groups. There were only two people, I believe, on the Trump side of things, people who were here supporting Alligator Alcatraz opening up. A mass of people who showed up to protest against its opening. They went into it for a little bit, and then it mostly wound up just being the larger mass of protesters chanting and doing and just trying to advocate as best they could for each of their positions. The positions that they took were varied. So there were a lot of people who were here, especially earlier in the day, who were mostly talking about environmental impacts to the Everglades. Later in the day, closer to that 11:30-ish protest that we saw, that had a lot of people mostly talking about due process and immigrants' rights, and their concerns for the potential for human rights violations that they're worried could happen here at Alligator Alcatraz. So yeah, it really was just a few minutes later they showed up. We also were able to see some people who are running for different political positions. They showed up around that same time. I talked with Josh Wheel, who's running for Senate in the Orlando area, or he's from the Orlando area. I talked with him just after chatting with you, Manny, and he was pretty fired up. He said he's worried about what we'll see here, what could come out of it in the future, the potential that this might not be as temporary as the governor is letting on. He's also worried about us for who will be stationed here or detained here.
Marie, you are out there. You see how remote it is. We're looking at some video on the screen. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, it is far away. Just for context for our viewers in Orlando, it took a little under 5 hours to get here from Lake Mary, where Fox 35 is stationed. And the road in, it's just nothing for hours. You are on back roads most of the time to get here, and on the way in, I mean, I will say the landscape is beautiful, but there's nothing around. That was kind of the point that the governor and that the president were making today. They said that it is 10 miles in any direction, just of Everglades, of the natural preserve. And that's why they're calling it Alligator Alcatraz. They're saying it would be difficult to escape from because you just run into this swampland. There's nowhere to go. You'd have to make it through several miles of wildland before you got anywhere or got to anyone who could potentially help. I will say we have seen a lot of creatures. We've seen a couple of alligators actually. Right away, we saw a few. Lots of fish in the water right along the roadway. So yes, it is swamp. It is remote. And that's actually part of the contributing factor for the environmental concerns. This is a dark sky area, which for anyone who doesn't know, Fox 35 has actually done some really cool reporting on dark sky areas. But the premise is that a dark sky area has very, very little light pollution. There aren't a lot of buildings, not a lot of things that would impact your view of the sky. And so astronomers and astrologers can come out and gaze up. They can look through telescopes and look at the cosmos. So there's a concern for that impact. Also, in rhythms for different animals. Noise pollution can do that too. So if you have a bunch of different trucks coming in at all times of day or at all times of night, that could impact the animals as well. That's what some people actually on both sides were concerned about today. I talked about people on the Trump supporting side who had that same concern. That's part of why they said they wanted this to be a temporary facility and not a long-term one. The governor said that today too, but just on the last point of this being remote, the president said today, he brought up they were flying through. It was 45 minutes of just nothing, 45 minutes of nothing. And he was talking about the potential for expanding this out, of making this facility even larger to house more detainees or to do something else with. He liked the idea that it was so remote. The governor kind of tried to intervene with that and say, no, we're only building on the land that already exists or on the facility that's already been developed. We're only using the concrete that's already there. So they were a little bit at odds over that. But I think that there were so many expressions of concern today that the governor seemed to understand from environmentalists that they don't want this to be any larger than necessary or to be around for any longer than is necessary. So that just was a little bit of disagreement today between the president and the governor.
And, in that news conference, the two of them actually, we know they went head to head in the last election, but they talked about, the president was asked what his relationship was like with the governor. He gave it a 9.9 out of 10 before then giving it a 10 out of 10, Marie, here to that point. What was the concern that you heard from people about a humanitarian side? Because there is, if I can pull it up here just on my phone really quickly, because I saw it when I was scrolling on Facebook, the Department of Homeland Security put up, some of the things to on-site resources is what they call them as I'm looking at it. There's legal resources, clergy, a rec yard, laundry services, and 24/7 air conditioning, which some people have pointed out that, in some prisons there isn't even air conditioning, but there's going to be AC at that facility. What did you hear from the people that you were out there speaking with about a humanitarian side of this?
Sure. So obviously it depends on who you ask. So people who are in support of Alligator Alcatraz opening who are here, they said, you know what? That's 3 meals a day and water provided. And yes, it's hot out, but it's going to be hot anywhere in Florida. So if you're in a detainee site or if you're just out wandering around, it's going to be hot. So they said, now, essentially, what are you complaining about? People who are protesting its opening said the heat is going to be a concern, and sure, there's AC, but only inside certain facilities, and it's not like people are going to be inside all day. They said that it's just kind of the use. We actually showed video of the close quarters. They were concerned about that. The biggest concern I think people have is over the question of due process. So there's a lot of people who are here who are saying that the people who are brought in are not actually given a fair access to representation, legal representation, that they don't have time to see a judge, that they don't have access to their lawyers because this is remote. It's really hard for lawyers to get out here. And so that they're saying they aren't getting a fair shot at the legal system before they're sent back to their home country or to another country. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, addressed that today. She said that they do have legal representation on site and legal services so that people will get due process. They also said that they're going to be deputizing I think it was the Army National Guard. I'm going to look this up as I'm talking just to make sure I heard that right, to be immigration judges. So that was one of the ways that the governor was saying that they were going to help people get due process while they're here on site, either at Alligator Alcatraz or at the new facility that they're thinking about opening, the other new facility, which will be in Northeast Florida, at Camp Blanding. That is an Army National Guard training site. It's just southwest of Jacksonville. That's going to have 2,000 beds for detainees. Alligator Alcatraz has 3,000 beds for detainees. I'm trying to find.
And while you do that, Marie, we got news from the State Director of Emergency Management today that construction on that second facility up near Jacksonville is supposed to start soon. And by soon, he means next week after the July 4th holiday. So this is an effort that is certainly ramping up.
Yeah. Oh, it's speedy. So, okay. So, yeah, to confirm, they said the Army National Guard, they're offering up people from the Army National Guard to be deputized as immigration judges. And the governor says that he's working with the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi at the Department of Justice to get those approved. So they're working on that right now. Yeah, so it's moving quickly. I mean, it was 8 days in between the state saying they had interest in this land and wanted to buy it from Miami-Dade County, who was the owner, and this opening. So it was incredibly fast. The Miami-Dade County mayor had raised concerns about the purchase price. The county said that it was worth $190 million and the state paid $20 million. The state, by the way, says that all of this money that they're spending is going to be reimbursable by the federal government through funds from FEMA. So there was a concern about the money spent, and also the environmental impact that it could potentially have. There's a lawsuit right now working its way through that was just filed on Friday. Response just came out yesterday from the state. that raised environmental concerns. And that lawsuit was brought forward by a group called Friends of the Everglades. They were the ones who actually stopped this same facility in the late 1960s from becoming this gigantic commercial airport that it was originally supposed to be. It was going to be the largest airport in Florida. One of the larger ones in the country was the plan. And this environmental group said that, or they filed a lawsuit to stop it, and won, saying that it would have this negative impact on the environment. They needed to stop construction. So that's why it wound up just this small training facility in the past. And so up until now, it just had no expansion at all. And so for the state to come in and say that they're going to build on it, that concerned Miami-Dade County's mayor, who asked for some studies to be done. That has not happened. And now the facility is up and running.
All right, Marietta Inger, she is on the scene in Ochopee, Florida. Thank you very much. We'll see your stories on Fox 35 and on Fox Local coming up at 5 and 6 o'clock. Thank you, Marie.
Yes.
We will charge on this Tuesday afternoon. Coming up next, it is the Tampa Connection. Stay with us. We are 2 minutes from returning with that. We'll be right back. Welcome back on this Tuesday to Florida Live. I'm Manny Martinez in this week for Garrett Weimer. He has the week off, and we certainly do hope that he is enjoying that well-deserved time off. It is 2:16, and it is time now to get our Tampa Connection. And so here with that is Fox 13 anchor Linda Hurtado. Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hi, good to be with you. So today we're going to start with a deputy-involved shooting over in Polk County. So you know Grady Judd had something to say about that.
Yeah.
It's a standoff in Polk County that led to shots fired, leaving a suspect with critical injuries. Sheriff Grady Judd said the situation began before noon yesterday at a home in Point Siena. Investigators tell us that 57-year-old Wilfredo Morales was seen arguing with his wife in the garage as a deputy approached the home. And when the deputy told the woman to come toward him, Judd said Morales shot at them, hitting the deputy's car window. Well, no one was hit, but the deputy called for backup. More deputies arrived along with a Florida Highway Patrol trooper, Haines City Police, and SWAT units. At a news conference, Grady Judd described what happened next.
At that moment in time, he had the gun to his chest, and he was waving the deputies in, the SWAT team members in, to shoot him. Of course, they didn't go in. We were still trying to talk to him, to no avail. We put more chemical agent in, to no avail. We tried bean bags, and when we tried bean bags, then he turned and pointed the gun at our SWAT team. That didn't work so well for him. We immediately shot him. He went down. We have SWAT medics on our emergency response, for our emergency response by our SWAT team. Our SWAT medics immediately began life-saving measures on Wilfredo Ramon.
Well, that suspect was airlifted to the hospital and underwent surgery, and at last check, he was in critical condition. The officers involved in the shooting were on paid administrative leave while the Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigates, which is pretty standard. Grady Judd always telling it like it is.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
All right, so we have another bizarre story. This one out of Zephyr Hills. Reported on a lot of strange stuff, but never something quite like this. Police tell us an argument that began at a gas station led to a man chasing a garbage truck while firing shots, apparently at the garbage truck. Investigators say it started around 5:30 a.m. last Friday when 46-year-old Quinson Croson had a brief verbal exchange with an acquaintance at a Wawa off Gall Boulevard. The encounter quickly escalated, according to police, who say Croson got into his SUV and followed the victim and his co-worker, who were inside this garbage truck. And witnesses told police that Croson pulled a handgun and fired several shots at the garbage truck while actually chasing it through the city. So investigators then tell us the SUV crashed into the truck moments later, causing the truck's passenger side door to open, tossing the victim's co-worker. I mean, my goodness, from the vehicle. The man went to the hospital, and we're told he is recovering. Police tell us that Croson, though, left the scene and was later tracked down with the help of surveillance video from nearby businesses, and a dash cam video also provided some help. So now he faces several charges after his arrest in Hillsborough County, 2 counts of attempted homicide and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Boy, that escalated quickly.
It certainly did.
A gun, and or where these days.
Yeah, you weren't kidding, Linda, when you said it was an unbelievable story. Did they give a reason as to how this all started? Forgive me if I missed it.
We do not have the motive at this point. I'm sure as they investigate further that will come out. But it's an argument. It started as an argument. I guess they visually were able to tell that. So we have another interesting story. A man who's lost his mother. And, you know, when that happens, you go through and go through all the belongings. Well, he came across about 1,000 more dolls that were works of his mom, and nearly 2,000 porcelain dolls. And he's trying to find now a home for them. Fritz Peltonen says that many of these dolls were handmade by his mom, Mary Elizabeth, who died just 2 months shy of her 99th birthday. And that was actually back in 2023. So his mom taught herself how to make these dolls, and he helped her with some of them. The dolls have many uses. For example, Mary Elizabeth's life-size creations were used as mannequins at clothing stores. She also sold dolls at one time for as much as $400 each. So Fritz now has possession of these dolls. Several of them are at his Tampa home, but there are 2,000 more at his mom's house in Michigan, and he just wants to find a good home for them. He told Fox 13's Ariel Placencia that he had a tough time finding a market, and they're not selling.
I would like to repurpose them somewhere in society. And if I can, it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just find the right place, museums, something like that.
What would be your pitch to them, to whoever's listening? Like, what are you going to get with this collection? What could you do with them? Sort of, what's their potential?
No, there's certain people that love dolls, and I get it. And there's some people that don't like them. I get it. They just think they're haunted or something. But it's just the people who love the dolls, and that's all it is. I just want them to find a home. That's what I really want to do, is just find all these things at home. I just can't throw them in the garbage. It just is not the right thing to do. And they're all signed and dated on them, too. So, and I have a lot more if you want them.
I totally get that. I mean, that's his mom's life work. He doesn't just want to throw them out. But my co-anchor yesterday was telling me, Yeah, he does. They look a little haunted, so he won't be one of them looking to pick them up. But if you can't take the dolls for yourself, Fritz says he's looking for advice on where they can go, and he just wants someone to point him in the right direction, right? You understand that. He wants his mom's work to be honored.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely something I think most people would keep, even if there is just a little bit of a, I don't want to say a creep factor, but let's be real, some of the
You can say it. My
but-
co-anchor yesterday said it. They creeped him out. But hey, everybody's got different personal tastes, so there is a home for these dolls. We just have to help him find them.
That's right. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you so much joining us here on Florida Live to give us our Tampa connection. We will see you next time, Linda. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we will continue on with more Florida Live here after the break. Coming up, we are going to have our Playbook Tuesday with Politico Florida. Stay with us. We are back in just a flash. Welcome back to Florida Live on this Tuesday afternoon. It's 26 minutes after 2 o'clock. It has been a very busy Tuesday. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Manny Martinez. Garrett Weimer has the week off. We are going to right now get right into our Florida playbook with Politico here. It's Playbook Tuesday with Politico Florida. There, I had to get it right there. We are joined now by Gary Fineout. And Gary, it has been a big day in Florida politics, just a big past couple of hours. First off, President Trump, Governor DeSantis, a joint event, their first in a long time.
Yeah. I mean, there haven't been a lot of, public events ever since DeSantis ran for president and challenged Trump. He did ultimately endorse Trump, of course, and raised money for him, but he didn't really do any big public campaign events for him. And, there was quite a few times that the two of them were together in the White House during Trump's first term. So, yes, this was a big day. The governor was there. It was, interestingly enough, Trump got asked some questions about his relationship with DeSantis, and DeSantis, and he talked a little bit more about it during a roundtable that they did. So it was very interesting to see Trump basically saying a lot of nice things about DeSantis, despite, the fact that the governor had run against him.
One of the things that stuck out to me was there was a rating that the president gave. He was asked, what would you say the nature of your relationship is now with Governor DeSantis, the president initially gave it a 9.9 out of 10. We'd have to ask him why that 10th of a point off, but then he corrected himself to give it a full-fledged 10. So one thing here is that also the president did not take sides in the governor's immigration battle with the state legislature. That's notable too, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean there were efforts apparently on both sides at the time to try to get the president to weigh in. You know, House Speaker Perez has maintained that they wound up with the final bill that they came up with, that they did do it in consultation with the White House, and of course DeSantis maintained that the first version of the bill they did was horrible, and that he had to force them to change it to not be as, you know, he contended that their first go at that legislation earlier this year would have been created amnesty for people and things of that nature. I mean, of course, the Republicans in the legislature disagreed with him on that point. But the fact of the matter is, it was interesting is, you know, the Trump administration sort of stayed out of that fight. Now, of course, you got to remember that was all kind of going on just as the president was coming into office and was doing all the things. So I don't think it should be seen as a great shock that the White House was sort of preoccupied with other things at the time that DeSantis was having his feud with the legislature. But I think more importantly, it's interesting is it's just today was very, if we just want to talk about the politics and not the policy and whether or not you know, how people feel about the idea of that project going forward down in the Everglades. I think the interesting thing was it was a mixture of people that were allies of DeSantis, and then there were allies of the president, including people who don't have the best relationship with the governor right now.
Yeah, I mean, go over the list here. That's Representative Byron Donalds, who we know he and the governor have butted heads here before, and he's also running to succeed the governor in office here in Florida. Also,
and the
states
hasn't endorsed him, and the governor has not endorsed Donald.
Correct. Yeah, and he does have the president's endorsement. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Gary, it was the president's endorsement right off the top, right from the very beginning in this race. And then also there was State Senator Joe Gruters from Sarasota. He's also feuded with Governor DeSantis at times. So they were on the Trump side, if you will, or at least not DeSantis' side. But you also had the Attorney General James Uthmeier there and Kevin Guthrie there as well. So you're right when you say it was an interesting, an eclectic, mix of politics there down in Ochapi. So moving on to the next topic, I think one of interest here is James Uthmeier's political career. It's been on a rise here. Stock has gone national now with Alligator Alcatraz, something that has gone viral. And it got him praise from President Trump today on the job he's doing, even the president saying he was good looking. So what do you think this impact has when it comes to his political career? Given that he's also selling merchandise about Alligator Alcatraz?
Well, I think all of this is interesting because, of course, what we've been wondering is whether or not someone was going to step forward and challenge Uthmeier in 2026. Obviously, Uthmeier has never run statewide before. He was appointed to the job by Governor DeSantis. He used to be DeSantis' chief of staff. He managed DeSantis' presidential campaign. So, of course, this is his first foray going from being a sort of behind the scenes person to being out in front of the cameras and being a politician. So, the speculation has been whether or not Uthmeier being so closely aligned with DeSantis, whether or not those who have their issues with the governor, and those are some people in Trump's own staff, how are they going to go along with all this? And I think what's interesting is that we haven't seen anybody step forward, but you almost got the sense today with the comments that the president made where he praised Uthmeier for coming up with the idea. He was overly, complimentary of him. Whether or not that's a prelude to a possible endorsement, I mean, we'll see how things go. I mean, the thing about it is that Uthmeier is getting a fair amount of publicity with Alligator Alcatraz, as they have dubbed it. But I think the question is, how well known is he, and whether or not there would be an opportunity for somebody to sort of step forward if they had the Trump endorsement and to challenge him in the Republican primary.
So on the other side of this, the opposition to Alligator Alcatraz, the chair of the Florida Democratic Party, Nikki Fried, she issued a statement. She called it a political stunt, what we saw this morning in Ochapi, and she said that it was all to serve as a distraction from the big BS bill. I'm cleaning up what it is that she said. Those were her words that were in the statement that she gave us. But while the president was sitting at that roundtable, that's when he got news that J.D. Vance, the vice president, cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. It heads back to the House now, but a lot of the talk has been that House members are going to be saying this is a different bill than the one that we approved. What do you think happens when they vote on Wednesday?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of pressure comes to bear. Obviously, the president has gone out of his way to sort of, nudge everyone along and to get this done. And, at the end of the day, you just have to wonder whether or not there are enough House Republicans who are, willing to buck the president and willing to risk what's happening with Thomas Massie, the congressman from Kentucky, who is basically got himself in a situation where now they're talking about primarying him and running against him. So, it'll be, I would say that from a Florida standpoint, since I'm primarily a Florida reporter, we haven't seen any of the Florida Republican delegation go against the bill, which is kind of interesting because there are some people, a perfect example, as we mentioned, DeSantis here earlier, you have not seen DeSantis get out in front and endorse the bill and say all sorts of good things about it. Now, I will note that there was an issue on AI and legislation and moratoriums, and that there are a lot of governors were concerned about that, including Republican governors, that apparently got taken out of the bill. And I know that DeSantis at one point in time had said he did not like that provision being in the legislation. But I think at the end of the day, the question is, it only takes a handful of Republicans, obviously, to be able to set it up so it wouldn't pass. But it would seem that there were some people who would say that the harder lifting was in the Senate. But to your point, will the House Republicans who were sort of apprehensive about the legislation now say that the Senate changes are too much for them to handle?
All right, Gary Fineout, political reporter, joining us for our Florida Playbook on Tuesday here on Florida Live. Gary, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we are going to take a quick break, and there is more Florida Live on the other side. We'll be back with some of the roundtable discussion before then an interview with a reporter from Miami about a Cuban man who died in ICE custody down in South Florida. Stay with us. Florida Live will be right back. We are back with Florida Live. It is 2:38 on this Tuesday afternoon. Here is a live look from the Hard Rock Hotel in Daytona Beach. You see that it is a sunny afternoon, and a lot of people are definitely out there and enjoying their time on the sand. Now, the story of the day today here in Florida has been one of immigration. The center of the immigration battle in this country is down in South Florida right now, and that is with the upcoming opening of Alligator Alcatraz, the newest detention center, which we learned today will have 3,000 beds, not necessarily bedrooms, room for 3,000 people. In fact, we saw some of the sleeping quarters, and they will be bunk style with, it looks like, dozens to a pod, if you will. So this has been, as I mentioned, the big story of the day, and one that we have been following here. And we also have developments in terms of some news in deaths at some of these ICE detention centers or people in ICE custody. And so for that, we will turn now to a reporter here, Claire Healy, the Esserman Investigative Fellow, and she is also a reporter at the Miami Herald. And Claire, thank you so much for joining us here on this Tuesday. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So you have done some reporting here. A Cuban man died in ICE custody in Miami on Thursday. What is the latest with that?
Well, his official cause of death is still under investigation, so we don't know what led to his death. We do have a kind of rough timeline of his time in detention. So Isidro Perez was arrested on June 5th. He was brought to Chrome Detention Center, which is a detention center here in Miami. He was arrested outside of a community center in Key Largo. He is, or was 75, and he was there. They do a general intake when you come into these facilities. And so during the intake, we know that they found several health issues. And so on June 17th, he was sent to the hospital. He was exhibiting a syndrome of that can lead to a heart attack. So he had chest pains, and he was in that hospital for about a week. He was brought back to Chrome Detention Center on June 25th. The next day, he had chest pains, and he passed away. So we know that he died June 26th. The official cause of death is still under investigation, as I said.
So this is an area of focus for some people who oppose these immigration detention centers, and especially the latest ones here in Florida. And on the other side of some of these concerns here, when it comes to humanitarian issues and just how they will be housed, I was speaking with one of our reporters who is out there in Ochopee today about what Homeland Security and the federal and state officials are saying about these facilities, that in this case that there is, at Alligator Alcatraz at least, AC, constant air conditioning. They have legal services and clergy. But Claire, is that the case at all of these ICE facilities, at all of these detention centers?
It should be. I mean, one thing I can say is we've been spending a lot of time looking into Chrome Detention Center, my colleagues and I, because right now there have been 10 deaths in ICE custody across the country in 2025, and 5 of them have been in Florida. 3 of those 5 have been individuals who were previously detained at Chrome Detention Center. Some of them died in the hospital, for example. And I think the question here is whether or not they received the medicine that they needed before they passed away, or the medical attention. And so with the last 3 deaths in Florida, we don't have their medical history. We don't have the autopsies yet. So that includes Isidro Perez. He just passed away. But my colleague and I did a investigation into 2 deaths, one in February and January, both individuals who were detained at Chrome before they died. And we did find with one Ukrainian man that staff took 40 minutes to call 911 while he was having a stroke because they thought he was intoxicated. And so we spoke with experts who said, every minute counts when you're having a stroke, and raised some questions about that. And then with the second man, we found in his autopsy listed that he had died of complications of schizoaffective disorder. And again, experts raised questions to us about that and said that is not an adequate description of a cause of death, as you cannot die from schizophrenia specifically, and they raised questions about drugs in his system and wanted to know more. So there are open questions about what treatment these people are receiving before they die.
And the answers to those questions, how difficult has it been to try and get them? How much digging do you and fellow reporters have to do to get to the bottom of that story?
You know, we want a full picture. We want as many documents as we possibly can, and we often do not have, unless we can have via the family as reporters, we don't have the full medical histories often from the hospitals, but we do have their autopsies and the death investigations, death reports. And those can give us a kind of fair picture of what happened, different conditions that they may have had. And we do know that, as I said, they have these intakes and medical evaluations when they're sent to Chrome, for example. Chrome has an in-house medical unit. And for those more serious cases, they're sent to the hospital. So one thing I will mention is Chrome specifically, there have been reports of overcrowding since February. We've been speaking with detainees since earlier this year who said they've been sleeping on the floor in crowded rooms, in unsanitary conditions. And we are hearing those reports again now. So I spoke with the family of Isidro Perez, and they said before he passed away, when he got to Chrome, he said it was overcrowded and he was sleeping on the floor. So this is something we've been repeatedly hearing about the housing conditions at Chrome.
What's it like to speak with these families who have lost a loved one to include in your reporting?
Well, it's incredibly important. They are really grieving. This is devastating for the family. You know, Isidro Perez raised a daughter and 6 stepchildren. Him and his ex-wife are very close. She said they had a beautiful friendship throughout his life up until the end. And so his family is grieving. They described him as, a father who taught them how to swim, how to fish. It is really important to hear from them about his life and who he was. You know, he was a mechanic. He was a fisherman. He lived towards the end of his life in a houseboat in Key Largo with 3 chihuahuas, 3 dogs, and he loved animals and rescued animals. And so his family is really grieving at this time. They said they were quite surprised. One of his stepdaughters said to me, you know, she didn't understand why a 75-year-old man was detained and why he was sent to the detention center.
Claire, last question. I think we've seen a number of stories where the family or family members voted for this administration, and then they will say, you know, in hindsight, they will say, this isn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I thought would happen. Have you encountered any of that in your reporting?
No, I haven't had that conversation with families. Like I said, the conversation has really been that this is incredibly difficult. They are really quite devastated, and this is a grieving process. They hadn't been able to see their loved one, most of them for weeks prior to their death. Some of them they haven't spoken for weeks, and so they are really, suffering.
All right, Claire Healy, a reporter with the Miami Herald. We want to thank you for being here with us. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and we will be right back with some more Florida Live right after this. Welcome back to Florida Live. We are headed toward the end of our show, but it has been an immigration-focused show with the tour of Alligator Alcatraz that the president took this morning. That is down in Ochopee, Florida, in Collier County, about 50 miles west of Miami. So he was greeted, the president was, as soon as he got off Air Force One by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. They took a tour together. In fact, why don't I show you some of that video? They took a tour here, and they walked through the facility. This was our first look inside that facility. You'll see some of the beds there. And we also, if I'll skip ahead to parts of it, this is when we walk through the building. You'll see the pods in essentially fenced-in cages in beds that don't look terribly comfortable with bunks, and you'll see just how many are in one group. 3,000 beds in total. So we did get reaction from the governor today as part of that round table. As we close the show, we will play what he said, and he began by thanking President Trump.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Welcome back to Florida, and I think this is the first time you've been back since the events of a couple weeks. So just let me say, as somebody that was serving on active duty in Iraq back in the day, we witnessed the number of our troops that were killed or wounded by the Iranians. We know that they're a militant Islamic regime that was hell-bent on getting nuclear weapons, and under Joe Biden, they were about to get nuclear weapons. And because of your strong actions, those dreams and those ambitions have been reduced to rubble. And I thank you. I know a lot of veterans thank you, and people in Florida really thank you for stepping up and really making a strong, tough, but strong decision. I think we're much safer as a result of that. Now, on the immigration, I think President Trump's election represented the chance for us to finally solve this illegal immigration and border problem once and for all. I knew he was going to do the border, although he did it very quickly and very thoroughly. I think that no one can say that that's been anything but a spectacular success. But then we have the issue of Biden let in how many millions of people? And you had millions that had been in over decades previous to that. You can't have a country if you don't have respect for the rule of law. You can't have a country if foreigners get to decide who comes in. No, we, the American people, make that decision, who's allowed or not allowed to come into our country. We've seen Europe be overrun by open borders, so we're not going to let that happen here. So when President got elected, I knew that the states had an important role to play in facilitating this really, really historic mission. We're the only state in America, Florida, that requires full cooperation with ICE from all state and local law enforcement entities. And what is the net result of that? We have these agreements for these 287G task force with sheriff's departments, police departments, state agencies, and it's really instrumental in rounding up a lot of really bad people who shouldn't be here. If you look at the number of those full-blown 287G agreements that have been executed around the country, the state of Florida accounts for 60% of those. If you look at the number of immigration arrests of illegal aliens on any given day, the arrests happening in Florida constitute between 15 and 20%. Nationwide. So we're all in on this because we understand how important it is to our citizens. It crowds schools, it crowds medical, it crowds housing. Yes, you have illegal alien crime as well, and people want the problem solved. And the only way we're going to solve it is if states like Florida step up and help the president, help Secretary Noem get the job done. Now, this facility here was really in response to us working with DHS and ICE from the time the president got sworn in. And the number one thing they kept coming back to was, you know, Biden decimated the agency. I mean, let's just be clear. You could have illegals in Florida. Biden would just release them. Even when they had notices or they had orders to be removed, Biden wouldn't send them back. So their interior enforcement collapsed under Biden. So they're building it back up. But they're like, we need detention space in order to be able to bring about more deportations. And so what we have here can hold 3,000 now. We have 2,000 facility up at Camp Blanding that we're going to be open, which is our National Guard site. But think about what you have here. They come here, say they already or been ordered to be deported. You drive them 2,000 feet to the runway, and then they're gone. It's a one-stop shop. And this airport that's been here for a long time is the perfectly secure location. It's going to make a big difference. And let me just thank everyone who was involved. We got the call from DHS a little bit more than a week ago. And here we are 8 days later with this facility open. And as soon as Air Force One departs, it'll be swept and it'll be open for business to be able to do. But our goal here is to process them and be able to effectuate their return to their home country. This is the opposite of what they were doing in New York by just putting them up in a hotel and then just letting them stay there indefinitely. No, we want to be able to send back. And when you walk into the processing, the President and I, Secretary Noem, Kevin Guthrie, walk through that initial intake, the first thing you see is information on how to go home on your own. Why would you want to come through Alligator Alcatraz if you can just go home on your own? I think a lot of people are going to make that decision. So you're going to have a lot of deportations that are going to be done by the administration, but I think you're going to have a lot of voluntary as well. So this is a force multiplier for the president's efforts. I would just say and echo what Secretary Noem says. There is no reason why other states can't be doing it. And I know Louisiana, Texas, a couple of them, but we've got if only the red states did this, they would be able to expand their capacity by tens of thousands, maybe 50, 100,000 on a given day. That's how you really start to make a difference. And so we're proud to be able to partner with the Trump administration on that. Mr. President, thanks for coming down. I think you highlighting this is going to move the needle in a big way throughout the country. And I think it's going to help all of us.
So that was Governor DeSantis speaking at the roundtable down at Alligator Alcatraz. Today, the president got a tour. Thank you so very much for joining us here on Florida Live. We will see you right back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. For those of you on Fox 35 and in Orlando, we'll see you at 4 for Fox 35 News Plus. Till then.
Florida Live starts now.
It is the video of the morning, and this is President Donald Trump as he gets off Air Force One this morning in Ochapee, Florida. Here in the Sunshine State for the first time since the beginning of May to take a tour of Alligator Alcatraz. You see there, he shook hands with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He also got off the plane with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. These are moments that you watched with us on Fox 35 News Plus. If you were with us at 11 o'clock, we had 2 hours of continuous coverage. Now, the three of them then took a tour inside the facility, and this was our first look along with you of this facility as it was complete. You'll see the beds there. They are bunk-style beds, and there were scores of them here in this one area alone that we could see. Gives you a close look at the close living quarters in which the about 3,000 migrant detainees will be held. And this is some more video of when we got a chance to walk through. Now, all of that led up to a roundtable in the late morning, which went on for a little more than 1 hour. The president arrived there. He ended up taking some questions there at the end, and that all of it about Alligator Alcatraz. He was also given a question about the big, beautiful bill, which, as he was seated here in Ochapee, ended up passing in the United States Senate thanks to a tie-breaking vote from Vice President J.D. Vance. So it has been a very busy morning. If you've been with us here on Fox Local and on YouTube, you've seen it with us here firsthand. Manny Martinez here with you until 3 o'clock on Florida Live. We thank you for joining us. Garrett has the week off. We do have a reporter. It is Fox 35's Marie Ettinger. She has been out and in Ochapee. And Marie, you were with us at 11 o'clock. You gave us a little bit of a look as to what the scene was like. You mentioned that there was a protest that was going to begin around noon. Did that ever materialize, Marie?
Materialized, honestly, a few minutes after we wound up hanging up with you last time, Annie. It was like not even 10 minutes later, everyone got here, and it got pretty rowdy, actually. I was surprised. There was some yelling back and forth between two groups. There were only two people, I believe, on the Trump side of things, people who were here supporting Alligator Alcatraz opening up. A mass of people who showed up to protest against its opening. They went into it for a little bit, and then it mostly wound up just being the larger mass of protesters chanting and doing and just trying to advocate as best they could for each of their positions. The positions that they took were varied, so there were a lot of people who were here, especially earlier in the day, who were mostly talking about environmental impacts to the Everglades. Later in the day, closer to that 11:30-ish protest that we saw, that had a lot of people mostly talking about due process and immigrants' rights and their concerns for the potential for human rights violations that they're worried could happen here at Alligator Alcatraz. So yeah, it really was just a few minutes later they showed up. We also were able to see some people who are running for different political positions. They showed up around that same time. I talked with Josh Wheel, who's running for Senate in the Orlando area, or he's from the Orlando area. I talked with him just after chatting with you, Manny, and he was pretty fired up. He said he's worried about what we'll see here, what could come out of it in the future, the potential that this might not be as temporary as the governor is letting on. He's also worried about tests for who will be stationed here or detained here.
Marie, you are out there. You see how remote it is. We're looking at some video on the screen. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, it is far away. Just for context for our viewers in Orlando, it took a little under 5 hours to get here from Lake Mary, where Fox 35 is stationed. And the road in, it's just nothing for hours. You are on back roads most of the time to get here, and on the way in, I mean, I will say the landscape is beautiful, but there's nothing around. That was kind of the point that the governor and that the president were making today. They said that it is 10 miles in any direction, just of Everglades, of the natural preserve. And that's why they're calling it Alligator Alcatraz. They're saying it would be difficult to escape from because you just run into this swampland. There's nowhere to go. You'd have to make it through several miles of wildland before you got anywhere or got to anyone who could potentially help. I will say we have seen a lot of creatures. We've seen a couple of alligators. Actually, right away we saw a few. Lots of fish in the water right along the roadway. So yes, it is swamp. It is remote. And